The sound of gold bars clinking in Moscow's vaults has fallen silent, and what you're about to discover will shock you to your core. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story about Putin's final gamble will change everything you thought you knew about this war. Comment below with your prediction of what happens next. The Kremlin's underground vaults, once gleaming with over 2,300 tons of gold, now echo with an emptiness that speaks volumes about Russia's desperation. Physical gold reserves in Russian banks at the end of 2024 sharply decreased to about 38 tons, or half as much as in autumn 2023, revealing a financial hemorrhage that threatens the very foundation of Putin's war machine. In the shadowy corridors of power where Putin makes his most critical decisions, the weight of economic reality has finally forced his hand. The man who once boasted about Russia's financial fortress has now been compelled to sell the nation's golden insurance policy. Every gleaming bar that once represented Russia's economic sovereignty is now being converted into bullets, bombs, and broken promises to his people. The irony cuts deeper than any Western sanction ever could. Russia, a nation that spent decades accumulating gold as a hedge against Western financial systems, now finds itself liquidating this precious metal to feed a war that grows more expensive by the day. The Central Bank of Russia, once proud of its position among the world's top 5 gold holders, now watches as more than 100 tons of gold have disappeared from Putin's so-called piggy bank, the Russian National Welfare Fund. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet or bars in a vault. This represents the systematic dismantling of Russia's financial future for the sake of Putin's imperial ambitions. Every ounce sold represents a family that won't receive adequate health care, infrastructure that won't be built, and a generation that will inherit nothing but debt and international isolation. The gold sales reveal a truth Putin desperately wants to hide from his people. The war in Ukraine isn't just failing militarily, it's bankrupting Russia at a pace that would make even the most pessimistic economists gasp. Nearly 6% of Russia's gross domestic product goes towards military spending, a percentage that would cripple any economy, but becomes catastrophic when combined with the most comprehensive sanctions regime in modern history. Moscow's financial engineers work through the night, calculating how many more months the remaining gold reserves can sustain this bleeding. They know what Putin refuses to admit, that every day this war continues, Russia moves closer to financial collapse. The gold that was meant to secure Russia's economic independence is now funding its economic suicide. The desperation becomes even more apparent when you realize that Russian consumers had bought 75.6 metric tons of gold in 2024, a 6% jump from the previous year, as ordinary Russians scramble to protect their savings from a collapsing ruble. Citizens are buying gold while their government is selling it, creating a tragic irony that perfectly captures Russia's current predicament. Behind closed doors in the defense ministry, generals present Putin with bills that grow larger each month. Modern warfare isn't just about soldiers and courage, it's about precision-guided munitions that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars each. Sophisticated electronic warfare systems that require rare earth elements and replacement equipment for the thousands of vehicles destroyed on Ukrainian battlefields. The war machine Putin built demands constant feeding, and its appetite has grown beyond what any normal economy can sustain. Artillery shells that once cost a few $100s now command premium prices as global suppliers realize Russia's desperate need. Every Kaliber cruise missile launched at Ukrainian cities carries a price tag that could fund a small hospital, yet Putin continues firing them as if money were infinite. Intelligence reports suggest that Russia is now paying black market prices for components that were once easily available through legitimate channels. Microchips that control missile guidance systems, night vision equipment for soldiers, and even basic communication devices now cost multiples of their pre-war prices. This inflation of military costs isn't accidental, it's the direct result of sanctions that have forced Russia into the shadows of international commerce. The human cost of this financial desperation is staggering. Russian families are being asked to sacrifice everything for a war that most don't understand and fewer support. Young men are being conscripted not just to fight, but to die for a cause that their own government can no longer afford to pursue. The gold being sold represents not just financial reserves, but the stolen future of an entire generation. Military analysts studying Russian procurement patterns have identified a disturbing trend. Quality is being sacrificed for quantity. As funds become scarce, Russian forces are being equipped with increasingly inferior weapons and equipment. This isn't just bad for military effectiveness, it's a death sentence for the young Russians being sent to fight with substandard gear. The ripple effects extend far beyond Russia's borders. International gold markets have felt the tremors of Russian selling, and commodity traders are watching nervously as one of the world's largest holders dumps reserves with the desperation of a gambler trying to stay in a game he's already lost. The value of Russia's gold reserves has surged by 72%, or $96 billion since the beginning of 2022. But even this increase cannot keep pace with military spending. Putin's advisors know that every gold sale brings Russia closer to the point of no return. Once these reserves are gone, there will be no safety net, no backup plan, no way to maintain even the pretense of economic stability. They're literally selling their country's future to fund a present that grows bleaker with each passing day. The transformation of Russia from a commodity powerhouse to a desperate seller of its own strategic reserves represents one of the most dramatic economic collapses in modern history. Nations that took centuries to build their gold reserves are watching Russia liquidate theirs in less than 3 years, a speed that defies all conventional economic wisdom. Financial institutions around the world are taking notes on Russia's predicament, studying how quickly a seemingly stable economy can crumble under the weight of poor political decisions and international isolation. Business schools will teach case studies about Putin's gold gamble for decades to come, using it as a textbook example of how not to manage a national economy during wartime. As Moscow's gold vaults empty, another reality becomes crystal clear. America has become the primary target of Putin's displaced aggression. Unable to defeat Ukraine militarily and watching his economy crumble, Putin has increasingly turned his rhetoric and threats toward the United States, painting America as the ultimate enemy responsible for Russia's failures. Russia poses a serious threat to the United States and Europe, and the Russian government, including President Vladimir Putin, cannot be trusted, according to recent intelligence assessments that detail a pattern of escalating aggression toward American interests. This isn't random hostility. It's a calculated strategy to deflect blame from Putin's failures onto an external enemy. The attacks on America aren't just rhetorical. President Vladimir Putin warned the West on Wednesday that Russia could use nuclear weapons if it was struck with conventional missiles, and that Moscow would consider any assault on it supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack, representing an unprecedented escalation in threats against the United States and its allies. Putin's strategy is as transparent as it is dangerous. If he can convince the Russian people that America is actively attacking Russia, then all of Russia's suffering becomes justified as patriotic resistance. The empty gold vaults aren't evidence of his failed economic policies, they're the cost of defending the motherland against American aggression. It's a narrative that requires increasingly dramatic threats to maintain credibility. Intelligence agencies across the Western world have documented a sharp increase in Russian cyber attacks against American infrastructure, reconnaissance flights near American airspace, and suspicious activity around American military installations. This isn't random harassment, it's a systematic campaign of intimidation designed to make America blink first in this high-stakes game of international chicken. The Biden administration, and now the Trump administration, have responded with measured but firm escalations of their own. United States President Donald Trump has ordered 2 nuclear submarines to shift their locations relative to Russia, sending an unmistakable message that American military power remains ready to respond to any Russian provocation. Behind the public statements and diplomatic protests, a more serious game is being played. American military planners are updating contingency plans not seen since the Cold War, while Russian generals draw up scenarios that were unthinkable just 5 years ago. Both sides are preparing for conflicts they claim they don't want, driven by a logic of escalation that seems to have its own momentum. The tragedy is that Putin's attacks on America are ultimately attacks on his own people. Every dollar spent threatening the United States is a dollar not invested in Russian infrastructure, education, or healthcare. Every resource devoted to this manufactured confrontation is a resource stolen from the Russian people who desperately need their government to focus on domestic priorities. American intelligence assessments suggest that Putin's inner circle is increasingly divided on the wisdom of this confrontation. Oligarchs who once supported Putin's regional ambitions are beginning to question whether antagonizing the world's most powerful military and economy serves Russian interests. However, their voices are being drowned out by hardliners who believe that only through confrontation with America can Russia reclaim its perceived rightful place as a global superpower. The American response has been carefully calibrated to avoid escalation while maintaining deterrence. Military exercises in allied nations have increased in scope and frequency. American naval patrols in international waters have become more visible, and intelligence sharing with allies has reached levels not seen since World War II. Every action is designed to send a clear message. America will not be intimidated by a desperate autocrat selling his country's gold to fund threats he cannot deliver on. Trump's 2-week ultimatum to Putin projects a tougher posture, promising sweeping sanctions and the threat of secondary tariffs on countries importing Russian oil. But the Kremlin swiftly dismissed the move as theatrical, revealing the dangerous dynamic where both sides feel compelled to escalate rather than appear weak. The most chilling aspect of this confrontation is how it mirrors the final phases of other failed autocracies throughout history. When domestic legitimacy crumbles, authoritarian leaders often turn to external enemies and increasingly desperate gambits to maintain power. Putin's gold sales and threats against America fit this pattern perfectly, suggesting that the current crisis may only be the beginning of even more dangerous behavior. American citizens are beginning to feel the effects of this escalating confrontation. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure have increased, foreign interference in American elections has become more sophisticated, and the constant threat of nuclear escalation has created an atmosphere of tension not seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Putin's desperation is becoming America's problem, whether Americans want it or not. The final gamble Putin has made with Russia's gold represents more than just an economic decision. It's a bet on the very survival of his regime. Every bar sold brings him closer to the point where he can no longer sustain the war, but also closer to the point where he has nothing left to lose. This combination makes him more dangerous than ever before. Political analysts studying Putin's behavior patterns have identified troubling similarities to other autocrats in their final phases. The increasing reliance on propaganda, the scapegoating of external enemies, the liquidation of national assets, and the escalation of international tensions all follow a predictable pattern that rarely ends peacefully. History suggests that leaders who reach Putin's current position of desperation often choose to take their countries down with them rather than accept defeat. The emptying of Russia's gold reserves represents a point of no return,